Some houses don't wait for owners. They wait for someone who can hear them. The road into Blackridge Hollow stretched narrow and forgotten, winding through miles of pine where the wind moved like something alive, whispering through branches that hadn't seen visitors in years. And Ethan Cole drove slow, one hand resting on the worn steering wheel of his old pickup, the other loosely draped near Rex, the German shepherd sitting upright in the passenger seat, ears high, eyes fixed ahead as if tracking something Ethan couldn't yet see. The kind of focus that had once saved. Lives overseas, and maybe still did, because Rex didn't react without reason. Never had. Not in 6 years. Not through storms. Not through silence. Not through the long stretches of road where the world seemed to forget them both. But this time was different, because a quarter-mile before the house even came into view, Rex stiffened, his body locking in place, a low sound forming in his chest. Not a growl, not fear, something older, something certain, and Ethan felt it too, that shift in the air, subtle but unmistakable, like stepping into a room where a conversation had just stopped, and then the house appeared, sitting alone at the edge of a clearing, 2 stories of weathered wood and pale gray siding. Its windows dark but not empty, never empty, not in the way abandoned places usually were. This house held its silence differently, like it was listening back. The porch sagged slightly under years of storms. A rusted lantern swayed faintly though the wind had already stilled, and, as Ethan cut the engine, the sudden quiet pressed in around them, thick and heavy, broken only by the ticking of cooling metal and the soft crunch of gravel settling beneath the tires. Rex didn't move, didn't blink, his eyes locked on the front door, and then slowly, deliberately, he stepped down from the truck, paws hitting the ground with purpose, not curiosity, not hesitation. Purpose. He walked forward without waiting, without looking back, crossing the yard as if he had been there before. And Ethan followed, boots pressing into damp earth, each step carrying that strange pull he couldn't explain, not logic, not instinct, something deeper, something unfinished, the kind of feeling that had brought him to places before without knowing why until it was too late to turn around. The porch creaked under his weight, a long, tired sound that echoed into the hollow stillness of the house. Rex stopped at the door, nose lifted slightly, ears tilting as if catching a sound buried beneath wood and time, and before Ethan could reach for the handle, the door opened, slow and quiet, revealing an elderly woman standing. Just inside, her silver hair pulled back loosely, her eyes calm in a way that didn't match the isolation of this place. She studied them both for a moment, not surprised, not afraid, just certain, as if this moment had already happened somewhere before. And then her gaze settled on the dog, and a faint smile touched her lips as she said softly, "There you are? I was beginning to wonder how long you'd take." The woman stepped back slowly, leaving the door open as if the house itself had decided to welcome them, and Ethan hesitated only for a second before stepping inside. The air immediately different, cooler but not cold, carrying a faint scent of cedar and something older, something like dust that had settled for years without ever feeling forgotten. Rex moved first, his paws soft against the wooden floor, his nose low, tracing invisible lines through the room as if following a memory instead of a scent. The woman watched him closely, her eyes not curious but knowing, and when Ethan finally spoke, his voice came out quieter than he expected, asking how she knew they were coming. The woman gave a small smile that did not quite reach her eyes and said that some things arrive long before they are seen. Her name was Margaret Hale. She said it simply, as if the name itself carried no weight anymore, and she gestured for him to sit at a small table near the window where pale afternoon light filtered through thin curtains. Outside the wind had gone completely still, the trees frozen like they were listening too. Margaret poured tea from a dented kettle, her hands steady despite the years written across her skin, and she spoke in a calm, measured tone, asking Ethan nothing about where he came from or where he was going, only if he intended to keep moving. And he did not answer right away because the question felt heavier than it should have. Rex paused near the far wall, his ears lifting sharply, his head tilting as if he caught something beneath the quiet, a faint sound, too low for human ears, something rhythmic, something steady. He stepped closer and pressed his nose against the wood, then tapped it once with his paw. A soft, hollow echo answered back. Ethan turned toward the sound, his body tightening without knowing why, and Margaret followed his gaze but did not react. Not with surprise, not with concern, only with recognition. She set her cup down gently and said that the house had many places it did not show to everyone. Her words hanging in the air like something that had been said many times before. Ethan stood and walked slowly toward Rex, placing his hand against the wall where the dog had touched it. The wood felt solid, but there was something beneath it, something that carried a faint vibration, so subtle it could have been imagined. But Rex did not imagine things. Ethan knew that much. The dog stepped back and looked up at him, amber eyes steady, waiting, and for a moment the room seemed to narrow around that single spot on the wall, the light dimming slightly as a cloud passed overhead, casting long shadows that stretched across the floorboards. Margaret spoke again, softer this time, saying that not every door in a house was meant to be opened right away, that some waited until the right person stood in the right place. And Ethan felt a strange pull in his chest, not fear, not curiosity, something deeper, like recognition without memory. He turned back to her, about to ask what she meant, but she simply lifted her cup again, as if the moment had already said enough. And across the room, Rex did not move, his eyes still fixed on the wall, listening to something that had not stopped calling. Rex did not leave that spot, not when the light shifted, not when the quiet stretched so long it began to feel like a presence. And Ethan finally stepped away from the wall, not because the feeling faded, but because it did not. It stayed with him, steady and patient, like something willing to wait. Margaret rose from her chair with slow, deliberate movement and crossed the room, her hand brushing lightly along the wooden surface where Rex had been listening. And for a moment she closed her eyes as if greeting something unseen. Then she turned back to Ethan and said that the house had been standing longer than most people remembered, that it had been built by hands that believed wood could hold more than shelter, that it could carry memory the way stone carried time. Ethan listened without interrupting, not because he understood, but because something in her voice felt grounded, certain, like truth spoken without needing proof. Outside, the sky had turned a muted gray, clouds gathering low over the trees, pressing the world into a softer silence. Margaret moved toward a narrow hallway and gestured for him to follow. Rex immediately fell into step beside Ethan, but his attention never drifted far from the place. They had just left, as if a part of him remained there, listening still. The hallway was dim, lit only by a single window at the far end, its glass slightly warped with age, casting uneven patterns of light across the floor. Margaret paused at a closed door and rested her hand on the handle without opening it. She said that there were rooms in the house she no longer used, not out of fear but out of respect, that some spaces held stories that were not finished yet. Ethan felt that same pull. Again, stronger now, not from the door in front of him but from somewhere deeper, somewhere beneath, a quiet rhythm pressing up through the floorboards, so faint it might have gone unnoticed if Rex had not suddenly stopped and lowered his body slightly. Ears sharp, head angled toward the ground. The dog tapped the floor once, then again, and this time Ethan heard it too. Not a sound exactly, more like a presence of sound, a pattern repeating beneath everything else. He glanced at Margaret and saw that she had noticed, not the way someone reacts to something new, but the way someone acknowledges something familiar returning. She opened the door slowly and revealed a small room, simple and still, with a narrow bed, a wooden dresser, and a single photograph resting on top. The image showed a man in uniform standing beside this very house, his expression calm, his posture steady, and beside him stood a younger version of Margaret, her hand resting lightly on his arm. Ethan stepped closer, drawn without thinking, and something in his chest tightened, not pain, not exactly, but recognition brushing against the edges of memory. Rex let out a soft, low sound and moved past him, stopping near the corner of the room where the floorboards darkened slightly. He looked back at Ethan again, waiting, and Margaret spoke quietly from behind them, saying that the man in the photograph had built more than a home before he left, that he believed some things should not be found until the right person came looking. And Ethan felt the weight of those words settle into place as the faint rhythm beneath the house continued, steady and patient, as if it had been counting time all along, waiting for this moment to begin. The room seemed to hold its breath after Margaret spoke, as if the walls themselves understood the weight of what had just been said. and Ethan stood there for a moment longer than he meant to, his eyes fixed on the photograph, while something quiet and unexplainable settled deeper inside him. Not fear, not confusion, but a sense that he had stepped into a story already in motion. Rex broke that stillness with a soft scrape of his paw against the floor, his focus unwavering, guiding rather than reacting. And Ethan followed, crouching beside the spot where the wood darkened, his fingers brushing across the grain until he felt it, a subtle difference. A seam too precise to be natural. Margaret watched without interrupting, her expression calm but distant, like someone witnessing a moment she had long prepared for. The faint rhythm beneath the house grew just enough to be noticed now, not louder but clearer, steady and measured like something keeping time beneath. Layers of silence. Ethan pressed his palm flat against the floor and felt the vibration travel through the wood, into his hand, into his chest, and for a brief second the world outside seemed to fall away, leaving only that quiet pulse and the sound of Rex breathing beside him. The dog lowered himself fully now, ears forward, nose close to the seam, and let out a soft whine that carried both urgency and certainty. Ethan glanced back at Margaret, searching for hesitation, for warning, but she only gave a small nod, not permission, not instruction, simply acknowledgement, and that was enough. He shifted his weight and pressed along the edge of the board until it gave slightly under pressure. The sound was faint, a dull click hidden beneath the steady rhythm, and then a thin line appeared, barely visible, tracing the outline of something long concealed. Ethan exhaled slowly, not realizing he had been holding his breath, and carefully pried at the edge until the board lifted just enough to reveal darkness beneath. Not empty darkness, but depth, the kind that carried a cold breath upward, tinged with metal and time. Rex leaned forward immediately, inhaling deeply, his body still but alert, and the rhythm below seemed to respond, not changing, not quickening, but present in a way that felt almost aware. Ethan hesitated again, not because he doubted what he saw, but because something about it felt intentional, as if this moment had been set aside, waiting for the exact combination of time, place, and person. Margaret stepped closer now, her voice softer than before as she said that her husband had always believed some things were meant to be protected not by locks, but by patience. That the house did not reveal its truth to those who came looking for it, only to those who arrived without knowing they already belonged. Ethan looked down into the narrow opening, the darkness below stretching further than he could see, and for the first time since arriving, he felt something shift inside him, not uncertainty, but acceptance, like a door opening quietly in a place he had kept closed for years. Rex placed one paw gently on the edge of the opening and looked back at him, not asking, not urging, simply waiting, and Ethan understood that whatever lay beneath them was not just something hidden, it was something left behind for a reason, something that had been waiting through years of silence, through seasons of wind and empty rooms, and now, for reasons he could not yet explain, it had chosen to be found. The opening in the floor did not look large enough to hold anything significant at first, just a narrow space between beams, but the air rising from it told a different story, cool and steady with a faint metallic scent that did not belong to an ordinary crawl space. And Ethan reached down slowly, fingers brushing along the inner edge until he found a recessed grip worn, smooth with age, as if it had been opened before, but not often, not recently. Rex stayed close, his body angled toward the opening, ears fixed forward, listening with a focus that felt almost human, and when Ethan pulled, the hidden panel lifted further with a soft resistance, revealing a deeper cavity beneath the house, one that extended several feet down before leveling into a shadowed space just beyond sight. The rhythm they had felt above seemed clearer now, not louder, but more defined, like a steady echo bouncing through wood and earth. Margaret moved closer but stopped just short of the opening, her presence quiet, her hands folded lightly in front of her as she watched, not with anticipation, but with something closer to relief. Ethan leaned forward slightly, adjusting his eyes to the dimness, and as the light from the room stretched into the space below, it revealed the top of a narrow wooden ladder, its rungs old but intact, leading down into what appeared to be a hidden room built beneath the house. The kind of space that was never meant to be found by accident. Rex let out a low breath and placed one paw carefully on the first rung, testing it, then looked back again, waiting as he always did, not moving without Ethan, not deciding alone. And Ethan gave a small nod more to himself than to the dog, the kind of silent agreement that had formed between them over years of shared uncertainty. He lowered himself onto the ladder, each step deliberate, the wood creaking softly under his weight but holding firm. The air grew cooler as he descended, carrying that same faint vibration that seemed to hum through the structure itself. And when his boots finally reached the ground below, he paused, letting his eyes adjust fully, the space around him slowly taking shape. It was not large, maybe 10 feet across, but it was carefully built, the walls reinforced with aged timber, shelves lining one side filled with neatly arranged boxes and journals, each placed with intention, as if this room had been prepared, not abandoned. Rex joined him moments later, landing lightly beside him, his attention already shifting from one corner to another, mapping the space in silence. Above them, the rectangle of light from the open panel framed Margaret's figure, her silhouette still and watchful. And for a moment the three of them existed in separate layers of the same place, connected by something unseen. Ethan stepped forward, drawn to a small wooden desk positioned at the far end of the room, its surface clean despite the years, a single oil lamp resting at its center, unlit but ready. And beside it lay a leather-bound journal, its cover worn but intact, the edges softened by time. He reached for it slowly, the faint rhythm beneath his feet continuing, steady as ever. And as his fingers touched the cover, something shifted again, not in the room, not in the house, but within him, a quiet recognition settling into place, as if this moment had been waiting not just in time but in him, waiting for the exact second when he would finally arrive where he was meant to be. And above, Margaret's voice drifted down softly, carrying no urgency, only certainty. As she said that some doors did not lead to places, they led to truths that had been patient enough to wait. The journal felt heavier than its size suggested, the leather warm under Ethan's fingertips as if it had absorbed years of sunlight and quiet thought. And when he opened it, the pages unfolded slowly, the ink faded but legible, neat lines and careful script speaking to someone who had taken their time with every word, not rushed, not hurried, but deliberate, each sentence a small window into a life that had once filled this hidden room with purpose and patience. Rex moved closer, his body low, head tilted as he sniffed the edges of the pages, the subtle movement of the air carrying the scent of old paper, cedar, and something faintly metallic. Ethan turned the pages carefully, absorbing the entries, reading about small triumphs, lost moments, and intentions left unfinished, and a pattern began to emerge, a map of thoughts and events that led to one conclusion, a hidden meaning embedded beneath the routine of life. And as he read, the rhythm beneath the house continued, steady and patient, like a heartbeat waiting to be acknowledged. Ethan felt the connection, not just to the person who had written the journal, but to the house itself, the space shaping itself around memory and care, guiding him toward understanding without ever forcing revelation. And as the light from the small lamp spread across the desk, casting soft shadows across the room, he noticed small objects tucked into corners and shelves, carefully arranged tools, trinkets, and papers that seemed ordinary at first but carried subtle hints of design and intention. Margaret's voice came down the ladder softly, reminding him that each item had been placed not for convenience, but for preservation, to wait until someone arrived who could recognize their value. Ethan nodded, understanding without needing further explanation. The house, the journal, the objects, and Rex's unwavering focus were all aligned in a way that made sense to no one outside, but perfectly clear here. He lowered himself to his knees, letting the lamplight fall on the floor around the ladder. Rex pressed close beside him, the warmth of the dog grounding him as he traced the path through the journal that led to a specific set of coordinates within the hidden room. Small markers in the margins, faint symbols indicating a sequence, and as he followed the guidance, the panels along one wall shifted slightly under his touch, subtle movement that revealed yet another concealed space. And from that space came a gentle draft carrying the faint scent of polished wood and earth, the air alive with the presence of history, care, and anticipation. Ethan paused, inhaling slowly, feeling the house respond to his attention. the quiet pulse beneath the boards more pronounced now, steady but insistent, drawing him onward, and he realized that this house, silent and patient for decades, had waited for someone willing to notice the small details, to listen, to act with care, and in that realization, the weight of purpose settled upon him, not as obligation, but as belonging, a gentle understanding that he was exactly where he needed to be. Rex nudged the journal with his nose, prompting him to continue, and Ethan smiled faintly, a sense of connection and readiness washing over him. The room, the house, the objects, and the dog, all forming a single harmony, guiding him forward into the discovery that had been patiently waiting for years. The hidden space unfolded gradually as Ethan traced the faint markings along the walls, each symbol, each notch, carrying a subtle instruction that he felt more than understood. The air cooler now, carrying whispers of the past, faint but distinct, like memories pressed into the fibers of the wood and the dust. Rex moved ahead a step, ears pricked, nose twitching as he sniffed a corner, where the floor sloped gently downward, a soft hum resonating from beneath the surface, steady and alive, guiding Ethan toward a small chest nestled against the far wall, its edges worn but solid. As he approached, the faint scent of cedar and old paper grew stronger, mingling with a hint of iron and polished stone. The chest was locked with a simple mechanism, not complicated but precise. Requiring patience and careful observation, Ethan crouched, studying the latch and the subtle patterns etched into the metal. Rex lay close beside him, tail still, watching, and then, with careful alignment, Ethan pressed and lifted, the latch yielding smoothly, revealing the interior lined with fabric that had held its color through decades. Inside were items arranged meticulously, journals, letters, and small handcrafted objects, each telling a fragment of a story, a life that had lived quietly beneath the house without seeking recognition. Margaret's voice drifted down from above the ladder, softly, reminding him that these objects were entrusted, preserved for someone who would understand their weight, and Ethan ran his fingers gently over the letters, reading names and dates, catching phrases that spoke of hope, patience, and care. The rhythm beneath the house remained steady, almost like a heartbeat, connecting past and present, guiding him as he realized that the treasures before him were not riches in the ordinary sense, but something far more enduring: wisdom, intention, and memory, each piece a bridge between the house and the people who had inhabited it. Ethan felt a quiet reverence settle over him, the air alive with recognition, and as he continued to explore the chest, he noticed a small, folded map tucked in the back, faded but legible, marking points within the hidden room and beyond, perhaps areas Margaret had maintained in secret, areas that had a story of their own. Rex nudged the map gently with his nose, prompting him to trace the lines and consider the connections. The floor beneath them pulsed subtly, steady and insistent, and Ethan understood that the house had been waiting for someone to listen with care, to observe patiently, and to act thoughtfully, not for wealth, not for gain, but to honor what had been built and preserved. And as he rose, holding the map and looking around the room, the weight of presence and purpose settled fully around him, a quiet understanding that he was exactly where he was meant to be, the dog at his side, the lamp casting a soft glow across the carefully maintained space, and the house itself seemed to exhale gently, as if welcoming him not just into a hidden room, but into a legacy of intention, patience, and quiet guardianship. The hidden room stretched before Ethan with a quiet majesty, the soft glow of the lamp illuminating shelves filled with artifacts of a life carefully preserved. And as he stepped further in, the air seemed to thrum with the accumulated patience of decades, each object, each journal, each handcrafted piece placed with intention, the rhythm beneath the house pulsing gently like a heartbeat guiding him. Rex padded silently beside him, amber eyes scanning every shadow, ears tilting at the faintest whispers that might have gone unnoticed by anyone else. Ethan knelt beside a shelf and lifted a small carved box, the wood smooth from years of careful handling, opening it to reveal letters tied with faded ribbons, the ink delicate but intact, and as he read, he felt a connection to the person who had arranged all of this, a sense of understanding without words. Margaret's presence was steady above, her shadow cast through the open panel, her voice soft but present as she reminded him that the house had its own memory, and that he was now a part of it. Ethan turned the pages of the letters slowly, each sentence a glimpse into moments of thought, care, and quiet wisdom, and he realized that the house was not merely sheltering objects. It was preserving intention, a careful legacy of trust and patience. Rex lifted a paw, tapping gently at the floor beside another seam, guiding Ethan toward yet another hidden compartment, this one deeper, carefully camouflaged beneath the floorboards. And when Ethan pressed, it gave way, revealing a narrow crawl space with air cool and faintly scented with earth and cedar, the pulse beneath them steady and clear, almost expectant. And Ethan crawled forward, lamp held high, the narrow space opening into a small chamber that felt suspended out of time, filled with small chests, neatly stacked journals, and objects arranged with a precision that spoke to care beyond the ordinary, each piece a fragment of a life waiting to be understood. And as he explored, he found a journal lying atop a small desk, its leather cover worn and soft, pages filled with handwriting that chronicled both ordinary and extraordinary acts of thoughtfulness. Ethan's fingers traced the lines, absorbing the meticulous attention to detail, the quiet devotion embedded in each entry. Rex lay close, alert yet calm, a steady presence beside him, and above, Margaret's voice drifted down again, gentle, reminding him that this was not discovery alone but a continuation, a stewardship. And as Ethan continued to read, a sense of responsibility settled over him, not heavy, not daunting, but affirming, the pulse beneath the floor steady as ever, resonating with the harmony of the house, the past, and the trust placed in him. And in that moment, surrounded by the accumulated care of years, Ethan felt a profound stillness, a recognition that he had been guided here for a purpose, and that he was now intertwined with the quiet, patient heart of the house. With Rex at his side, vigilant and steady, he understood that this space was no longer just hidden. It was alive with the stories and intentions of those who had preserved it, and that he, too, was now a guardian of that legacy, ready to honor it with the same patience, attentiveness, and respect that had been demonstrated for decades. The hidden chamber seemed to breathe softly around Ethan, the faint pulse beneath the floorboards steadying into a rhythm that matched his own heartbeat. And as he moved among the carefully arranged objects, he realized the house had been waiting not just to be found, but to be understood. Each journal, each handcrafted item carrying fragments of stories, lessons, and care left behind by hands that trusted time to protect them. Rex padded quietly beside him, tail low but eyes bright, sensing the unspoken weight in the air. And when Ethan traced the edges of a small wooden chest at the far end of the room, he found a lockless compartment tucked neatly within, holding folded papers, photographs, and delicate objects that seemed ordinary until he allowed himself to notice the subtle symbols and markings that tied them together. The air smelled faintly of cedar, earth, and old ink, and as he carefully unfolded a photograph, he saw Margaret Hale standing beside the man from the earlier picture, her posture straight, her expression calm, her eyes hinting at quiet pride and trust. The journals nearby contained careful notations about the house, its construction, the purpose behind each secret space, and small annotations hinting at messages for someone who could recognize the patterns. Ethan leaned back slightly, absorbing the care woven into every detail, the steady pulse beneath the floorboards underscoring the continuity of thought and intention that had persisted for decades. And Rex, sensing the gravity of the moment, nudged Ethan gently toward a small trapdoor in the corner, his paw tapping lightly against it, signaling that something further awaited. Ethan knelt and lifted the door with slow, deliberate motions, revealing a narrow stairwell leading down into a deeper space, cool air drifting upward carrying the faint scent of stone and old wood. Each step down felt like entering another layer of history, the rhythm beneath the house now a guide, steady and alive. And at the bottom, the stair opened into a room softly illuminated by natural light filtering through a small, hidden window, shelves lined with carefully cataloged books, maps, and artifacts, all arranged as if expecting someone to arrive. Ethan ran his fingers along the spines, feeling the texture and weight of years. Noticing that each object was positioned to be discovered in a particular sequence, Rex settled beside him, chest rising and falling slowly, alert but calm, and Ethan understood that the house itself was teaching, that each discovery was a lesson in patience, respect, and care. The pulse beneath them continued, a constant companion in the quiet. And as he turned a page in one of the journals, he read instructions not merely for use of the room but for preservation of the stories it held. Ethan realized that he was not simply uncovering secrets, but stepping into a living narrative, one that had been patiently waiting for a person capable of honoring it. The weight of purpose settled fully over him, grounding him in the present while connecting him to the decades of intention embedded in the house. And as he looked around, the soft light casting gentle shadows across the objects, a sense of calm resolve filled him, the rhythm beneath the floorboards steady and reassuring, and he felt a quiet certainty that he, with Rex at his side, was now the guardian of the stories, the care, and the legacy preserved here, ready to carry it forward with patience, attention, and reverence. The moment Ethan stepped back from the journals, a calm settled over the hidden room, as if the house itself had exhaled, the pulse beneath the floorboards still steady, marking time in a quiet rhythm that echoed the patient care embedded within every object, and he felt a profound connection to the generations that had maintained this secret space, the weight of their intention pressing lightly upon him, not burdening, but guiding. Rex moved closer, pressing against Ethan's leg, his amber eyes reflecting the soft light from the lamp above, alert and watchful as ever. And Ethan understood that the dog was not simply a companion but a partner in perception. Sensing the subtleties that humans often overlooked, the air carried a faint scent of cedar, earth, and ink, mingling to form a tapestry of memory and preservation. And as he walked slowly among the carefully arranged objects, he noticed small personal touches left in plain view. A carved figurine here, a folded note there, each piece a marker of presence, of life once lived and preserved with care. Margaret's voice drifted down from the ladder softly, her words calm and steady, reminding him that the house had long waited for someone to see, to feel, and to honor the space. And as he traced the lines of an old map laid across a small desk, he realized that the hidden room was more than a repository of objects. It was a living record, a guide to values and choices. Embedded within the walls themselves, the rhythm beneath his feet now seemed to pulse in unison with his breathing, reinforcing a sense of continuity and connection. Ethan knelt beside a wooden chest, opening it carefully to reveal neatly stacked papers, each labeled with dates and notes, a testament to the care and attention of those who had built and maintained the house. And Rex nudged a small bundle of letters with his nose, prompting Ethan to examine them, discovering thoughts, reflections, and guidance left behind with the quiet hope that someone would understand. As Ethan read, he felt a sense of belonging grow, a recognition that he was not merely uncovering history, but participating in it. The house, the dog, and the objects forming a triad of trust and guardianship. He rose and moved to a small window set high in the wall, light filtering through to illuminate dust motes drifting lazily in the air. The view outside was a blur of forest and sky, the world beyond seeming. Paused, giving him space to reflect on the depth of discovery. Rex sat obediently beside him, tail low, eyes focused on the smallest movement in the shadows, and Ethan felt the connection, profound and steady. Between past and present, caretaker and preserved, the house seemed alive in a way that transcended simple bricks and wood, holding intention, memory, and expectation. And in that stillness, Ethan knew that he had been chosen not for what he could take, but for what he could honor. And as the lamp cast long, gentle shadows across the floor, the quiet pulse beneath them a steady companion, he understood that he and Rex had found more than a hidden room. They had found a legacy, patient, deliberate, and waiting, a trust entrusted through time, ready now to be carried forward. The deeper chamber stretched quietly around Ethan, shelves lined with carefully labeled boxes and meticulously folded documents forming a mosaic of thought and care that seemed almost sacred. The steady pulse beneath the floorboards threading through the room like a lifeline connecting past and present. Rex moved with deliberate precision beside him, his ears twitching at the faintest changes in the air as He guided Ethan toward a low cabinet in the far corner, and as Ethan knelt to open it, the wood responded with a soft creak, revealing a series of small compartments, each holding objects arranged as if awaiting discovery in a particular order. He lifted the topmost box to find letters, journals, and photographs stacked neatly. The faded ink and soft edges of the paper telling stories of lives once active, but preserved with extraordinary care. Margaret's voice drifted down the ladder softly, reminding him that the objects had been placed to teach, to guide, not for curiosity alone, but for comprehension. Ethan carefully opened a journal, running his fingers over the pages, reading about decisions made with patience and thoughtfulness, about small triumphs and quiet moments of reflection, the rhythm beneath the house steadying his own heartbeat as he absorbed the legacy preserved for someone who could recognize it. Rex pressed his nose gently against a bundle of letters, nudging them toward Ethan, who unfolded them slowly, discovering careful notes, sketches, and instructions detailing the use of the room, the house, and the placement of objects, each item imbued with purpose, a message carried through time for those who would listen. The air held the faint scent of cedar and old paper, warm yet cool with the history of decades. And as he moved deeper into the chamber, he found a small map, folded and worn, indicating hidden areas, shelves, and corners within the room itself, a guide left for him to understand the layout and purpose of the space, the subtle pulse beneath him seeming to affirm his discoveries, each step, each touch, a continuation of the attention and care of those who had maintained the house. And as he traced the lines on the map with his finger, connecting points and symbols, he understood that the house was not merely a collection of objects, but a living chronicle of intention, patience, and guardianship. Rex stayed close, chest rising and falling steadily, eyes bright and attentive, and Ethan felt a quiet companionship in the dog's presence, a shared understanding of the trust placed upon them. And as he looked around the chamber, light filtering through the small window above, casting patterns on the floor, the combination of objects, journals, maps, and the rhythm beneath the boards formed a seamless narrative, guiding him toward comprehension, appreciation, and readiness. And he realized that this moment was not discovery alone, but a responsibility, the care of decades entrusted to his hands, to be preserved, understood, and carried forward, the room, the house, and Rex together forming a harmony that spoke to him of legacy, intention, and the quiet power of patient preparation. And in that stillness, surrounded by the accumulated thought, effort, and trust embedded in every corner, Ethan understood that he had arrived at a place where past and present converged, where he was chosen not simply to witness, but to continue, to honor, and to protect what had been patiently kept alive through time. The hidden room seemed to exhale as Ethan traced the last few lines in the journal, each sentence a deliberate whisper from the past, the lamplight casting long, shifting shadows across the meticulously arranged objects, and he realized that every item, every note, every photograph had been placed not for curiosity, but for understanding. A quiet lesson in patience, observation, and care. Rex settled closer, chest rising and falling with a steady rhythm, ears alert to the faintest sounds, eyes bright with the same comprehension Ethan felt stirring inside him. And as he lifted a small wooden box from the floor, the smooth, worn edges confirmed it had been handled with reverence. Inside lay letters tied with delicate ribbon, photographs of moments long past, and small trinkets that held meaning far beyond their size. The pulse beneath the house continued, steady and patient, like a heartbeat echoing across decades, and Ethan felt it in his chest, a connection that transcended time. Margaret's presence above remained calm, her voice soft and steady as she reminded him that the house had its own memory, one that required care and respect to navigate. Ethan opened a letter, reading the careful script that spoke of lives lived quietly, of choices made thoughtfully, of intentions preserved for someone who could recognize them. And with each word, he felt the weight of responsibility settling upon him, not as burden, but as honor, a chance to continue what had been preserved. The air smelled faintly of cedar, aged paper, and subtle earthiness, carrying the history of the house and those who had maintained it. Rex nudged another bundle gently with his nose, prompting Ethan to examine its contents, finding small maps, annotations, and sketches that outlined the careful design of the space, the rhythm beneath the floorboards steady and alive, guiding him, connecting him to the legacy embedded within the walls as he moved among the shelves, lifting, examining, and understanding the sequence and placement of objects. He realized that each was intended to teach, to show the way to respect, patience, and presence, not to reward curiosity, but to reward comprehension. The room held itself in quiet reverence, as if acknowledging his understanding, the pulse beneath his feet carrying a subtle affirmation, and Ethan felt the merging of past and present, the house, the objects, and Rex forming a continuum of trust, patience, and guidance. He stood and looked around the room, noticing the alignment of shelves, the soft light filtering through the small hidden window, and the harmony of the space settling over him. Margaret's voice reminded him again that the house had waited, quietly, for someone to notice, to act with care, and now that he was here, he understood that he was not merely observing, but participating in a living narrative that had been preserved for decades. And as he held the last letter, he realized the rhythm beneath the boards had become almost imperceptible, but the connection it had established remained, steady, patient, guiding him toward the understanding that he, with Rex at his side, had become part of a legacy built on intention, care, and trust, ready to continue and honor the preservation of a story that had waited patiently for its time. As Ethan emerged from the hidden chambers, carrying the journal and the small bundle of letters, the house seemed to exhale softly, the quiet pulse beneath the floorboards now a gentle hum of approval, guiding him through the narrow stairwell back into the main room. The afternoon light had shifted, slanting through the windows in golden streaks, painting the worn wooden floors with warmth and shadow. Rex trotted close beside him, tail low but wagging slightly, eyes bright and alert, as if understanding the significance of what had just been discovered. Margaret stood near the doorway, her expression calm and knowing, hands folded lightly, watching him with a quiet pride that spoke of patience, trust, and understanding. Ethan placed the journals on a small table near the lamp, careful not to disturb the arrangement of the room, and looked around, taking in the layers of history, care, and intention that surrounded him, the shelves, the hidden compartments, the carefully curated objects, all forming a narrative that spanned decades, a story waiting for the right person to step into its rhythm. And he felt the weight of that responsibility settle lightly, yet firmly on his shoulders. The house itself seemed to recognize his presence, the air carrying a subtle warmth, the scent of cedar and aged paper mingling with the faint aroma of dust and time, a comforting blend that spoke of preservation and legacy. Ethan knelt for a moment, tracing the edges of the journal and the letters, letting the touch of the leather and paper connect him to the lives that had maintained this space, the pulse beneath the boards steady and reassuring, like the slow heartbeat of a patient guardian. And as he rose, he felt a sense of purpose settle within him, the room, the house, and the objects around him all in quiet alignment. Rex shifted closer, resting his head against Ethan's leg, sharing the calm but attentive vigilance that had guided them through every step. Margaret's voice broke the silence softly, reminding him that the house had always been patient, waiting for someone who would notice, understand, and honor it. And now that he had arrived, the trust could continue. The stories could live on through his care. Ethan moved toward the window, looking out over the property, the forest beyond still and silent, bathed in the warm glow of late afternoon, the air carrying a sense of stillness and reflection. He felt a connection not just to the physical house, but to the intention, patience, and guardianship embedded in every corner. Rex shifted slightly, ears pricked, attentive, as if acknowledging the completeness of their journey, and Ethan realized that the inheritance he had received was more than tangible. It was a call to stewardship, to carry forward the care, thoughtfulness, and quiet dedication preserved through generations. The house, the objects, the pulse beneath the floor, and the dog beside him, all forming a harmony that anchored him to the present while connecting him to the past, a living narrative that he was now a part of. And as the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the floorboards, Ethan felt a deep sense of fulfillment and belonging. understanding that he had been chosen not to take from the house, but to honor it, to continue the patience and careful attention of those who had come before. And with Rex at his side, he breathed in the gentle warmth of the room, feeling the quiet rhythm of legacy and care envelop him, knowing that he was exactly where he was meant to be, entrusted now with the preservation and continuation of the stories, lessons, and intention that had waited so long to be acknowledged and honored.